Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Music Den. I'm your host, Armando Venditti. Hoping you guys are having a good day, and above all else, that you're indeed looking after yourselves and one another. Today, ladies and gentlemen, before I get into the topic of another fantastic episode, or what we hope to be a fantastic episode, I want to welcome back to the channel Mr. Jim Bricker. How's it going, Jim?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Good to be back with y'all.
Good to have you back. And the one and only Mr. Ken Cheshire. How's it going, Ken?
Going well. It's been years since we've been together, and it's good to be back.
It's only been, what, 2 weeks? Pretty much. So, all
Two,
right.
three, who's counting?
Something like that. That's right. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are going to be looking at albums that are celebrating the 50th anniversary for the month of June. This is a part one of a two-part episode because we just like to do things that way. So, we have a list of 8 albums as I look at my list here, and we're going to split them up into 4 albums per episode. And this is quite the list here. So, coming up,
75 was quite the year.
yes, it was actually. When you look back
Yeah.
at the list of albums that were released, it's quite the year. So, number one on the list, we have a rocking band, a band that broke boundaries musically, that just quite scandalous and, all that good stuff. The Bee Gees,
Hmm.
bit of irony there. With the album Main Course, it is the band's 13th release. And it was released in June of 75 on RSO Records. Now, this album also marked the end of their contract with Atlantic Records. At this point, the album has a playing time of 40 minutes and 56 seconds, and it reached number 14 in the US charts and number one in the Canadian charts. Produced by Arif
Oh.
Mardin.
Mhm.
And before I give my 4 cents on this release, I will pass the virtual mic over to Jim.
All
Miss
right.
Jim. What are
Aw,
what are your views on this
what
album?
are my views? Well, first of all, I'm surprised this album only got to number 14 in the US because as a, 10-year-old listening to AM radio, I remember hearing Nights on Broadway and Jive Talking all over the place. So, in my mind, just because of oversaturation, you know, I figured that Main Course was a number one album. Um, but we'll set that aside. Um, the other thing to kind of grapple with related to the Brothers Gibb is that, of course, you've got this albatross of, Saturday Night Fever hanging around them, which was, a few years later, but it tends to kind of color, their entire output. And at least just your sort of first blush opinion of it, it does for me. And I find that it takes something really distinctive and special that kind of hits the reset button to kind of relook at, you know, this band in particular, or almost any band, with any sort of objectivity.
Mhm.
Um, for me, this album has one giant reset button on it, and it's where I want to kind of spend the bulk of my time. And to me, this giant reset button is the final cut on side one, which is at least I think that's the final cut on side one. Maybe the first cut on side two.
No,
It's Fanny Be Tender with My Love. Um, Good God, this is a perfect song. I know I've heard it before I did the listening for this album, and it probably heard it in passing or on the radio or something. Obviously, it never achieved that bit of pop culture consciousness that Nights on Broadway did or Jive Talking, because that was just, up tempo funk tunes. They were great. But Fanny is just this R&B soft rock soul masterpiece. You know, uh, First of all, it's got kind of the trademark Bee Gees stuff all this time. The falsettos that Barry Gibb and Robin Gibb are doing in here are just outstanding. And one of the reasons that I think they said they never perform this live is they can't replicate all those intertwining harmonic falsettos going on in the chorus. Um, it's so it's the combination of those trademark falsettos with this thing that sounds like it's completely out of the Motown or Philadelphia soul playbook of just this the breakdown in the chorus where I think it's Robin who's singing because it's all that I've got, and it kind of goes to the end. I mean, that sounds like, stuff that R.F. Martin had done with Hall and Oates. It sound yeah. In fact, I think Martin produced "She's Gone" by Hall and Oates, and so it's got that kind of feel to it as well. Um, uh, I'm just I'm just kind of struck with this track. It's like all my focus is on it. I don't feel like I'm sort of doing it justice here.
You're
Um,
doing fine. Keep going.
Quincy Jones, well, I feel like I'm blabbering. Quincy Jones called this like one of his favorite R&B songs of all time, which is not bad for, a bunch of white boys from Australia, um, you know, doing some rhythm and blues.
The devil, you
Um,
say. Go on.
the devil, I do say. Um, yeah, I mean, overall, this album, it goes from you know, to me, it peaks really high with, Fanny Be Tender, Nights on Broadway, Jive Talkin', of course, outstanding tracks. There's a lot of other songs in here that kind of vary from okay to meh. Um, Come On Over is kind of noteworthy for some great harmonies there. It's also a track that Olivia Newton-John covered quite successfully. But to me, this whole album is just stands on the mountaintop of Fanny Be Tender. Um, just out, just outstanding track in terms of the variety of what's happening melodically, how it kind of does a couple of head fakes in time before it gets into the chorus, and then that key change at the end is just like, okay, you just made this 100 times more awesome by pitching it up a notch. um this is a overall, okay album, but to me, just rediscovering this song and just how freaking amazing it is just sort of worth the journey in and of itself. I mean, if you've, for me, I would say if people just have the Bee Gees in this ghetto of Saturday Night Fever or even Jive Talking the Nights on Broadway, make make a beeline to the end of side A and listen to that track and just blow your expectations apart. Absolutely phenomenal tune
Okay.
on
All right.
on an okay album.
Okay. All right. Ken,
I think
you.
it's interesting that you don't have a strong memory of Fanny. Maybe
I don't.
maybe it just depends on which radio market at the time. Because like I said,
Would
in
have been.
in 75, radio stations were programming their own playlists for the most part. You didn't have the corporate same top 40 for every radio station.
Yeah.
So
I know,
but
yeah.
I remember now also I bought the album when it came out, and yeah, it's an outstanding track. And this, so anyway, kudos for you for rediscovering that. This album started a movement. Um, it's a mixture of dance, R&B, disco with tight vocal harmonies, which I don't think was common by this time. It took um, it took this upcoming subgenre to complete different heights, to a different level with the vocals and the harmonies. This is the first of the BG albums that strongly featured Barrios I mean, Barry's falsetto. He didn't do that much. He usually left all the heavy lifting for the high notes for Robin
Hmm.
before this,
Hmm.
um, because the Bee Gees were always known for their tight three-part harmonies. That was one of their strengths. But one of the things that I noticed, for instance, this album is severely heavy on side one,
Oh
with
yeah,
Yeah.
the
yeah.
hits and stuff. But honestly, there is, for me, seems to be an unrecognized hero for this album, and that's Maurice Gibb. Robin and Barry always seem to get more attention than Maurice because Maurice never did. He probably did do some lead vocals, but not very much. That was
Hmm.
left to the other two. But Maurice wrote um, four out of the five songs on side A,
Right.
and that includes the three hit singles. Maurice also played lead and rhythm guitars as well as bass,
Bass. Yeah.
which he did. And then, of course, he, had his equal one third on the vocal harmonies. Um, yeah, Fanny is probably my favorite song off the album. Come On over time has become um, more popular. It's been covered many times just because it's just the structure of the song, and of course it really focuses on the harmony, which allows other groups that do a lot of harmony can really take advantage of. Um,
Hmm.
I love the little background story of um, how Jive Talking came along.
Oh, when they
Supposedly
were
they
at
were
Criteria
in their
Studios.
bus and the windshield wipers, and they started
Ah.
boom chicka choom chicka choom
You
chicka
know, I
choom.
see, because I heard something different. And I heard another
Okay.
story. The story I heard was there was a bridge that you had to cross getting
Oh
from
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Criteria and studios where
You're
it was
right. You're
recorded.
right.
And whenever you would hear Barry Gibb said, whenever you would hear the
Tires.
the tires going over the bridge, it would be like a ka-chung, ka-chung sound. So
Yeah,
that sort of rhythm stuck in his head. And you know,
you're right.
that's where he got the idea, the impetus
You're right.
for it. And also, a little side note, that was where, um, uh, oh my God, Lindsey Buckingham got the idea for secondhand news from Jive Talking. So,
Okay, I can hear that.
yeah, that intro,
Okay.
the ka-tung, like that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I digress. Okay, keep going. My
Yeah, but
apologies.
the album is this a lot of people didn't because it didn't chart that highly in the US. A lot of people think that the Bee Gees started this style with um with the film, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and actually this album is kind of uneven because not all of the songs on this album are of that style.
Yeah.
Th this
Sure.
album they were finding their way into a new sound with a new label and a new producer and manager in Stigwood. So it just happens to be very heavily weighted on side one, but man, it's some
Yeah.
good stuff. And listening to it again this week for the first time in a long time, it still holds up as far as I'm concerned. The good is still good, the man is still man. So, okay, fair enough.
Okay. Well, this album fared better than the previous album.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, Barry Gibbon interviews has talked about first fame and second fame, and this was part of their second phase of second fame, where they had broken up at one point because they were getting on each other's nerves, and they were each doing solo releases, and then they decided to come back together because it's been noted that it was usually Barry and Robin that were getting on each other's nerves. They were the combative two of the three. And yeah, I mean, Nights on Broadway, Jive Talking, Fanny B. Tender. It is front loaded in terms of, okay, I'm talking CDs now. It is front loaded in terms of the CD release. Um, Fanny Be Tender with My Love. Oh my God. The only thing that irks me of that song is the outro on the overdubs. It's like with the harmonies. It sounds to me he's shrieking at one point with the harmonies, and it's just like it's almost like nail. I'm gonna get shot for this one, but it almost sounds like nails on a chalkboard at one point because
I know where
Fair
you're
enough.
going. Yeah.
it's like, oh my God, like, can you shut up at one point? Like, like just calm it down a little bit, bring it down, just like 1 or 2 decibels, just a little bit.
May-
You know what I mean?
Maybe that key change just stretched their abilities just a little too
I
far,
mean,
which is why it was never performed live. If
yeah,
I
it's just
recall the notes.
it's that key change. And I mean, other songs like Songbird, um, written by Maurice Gibb and Blue Weaver, the session part of the recording band. To me, it sounds a lot like Wasted Time uh, from the Eagles, from Hotel
Oh,
California.
okay.
Yeah.
It's reminiscent of that. You can sort of
Yeah.
hear the influence of Wasted Time. Like, although this came out first, I'm saying
Mhm.
Wasted Time was influenced by Songbird, kind of, you know what I mean, in terms of the arrangement. It reminds me of that. Um, yeah, the rest of the album for me, side two, is like, okay, all this making love, Country Lane, come on over. Okay, Edge of the Universe, which I do believe was a single. That's all right. It's okay,
Yeah.
but I mean, they were on the right path with this. I mean, yes, they exploded big with Saturday Night Fever, and that was a complete accident on their part. But main course, it's all right.
Yeah,
It's all
it's all
right.
right.
It's all right. Okay.
It's of the time, and because of the three monster singles, it holds up because of that. But I think if it were not for those three monster songs, I think it would just sort of be, kind of forgotten.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Sure.
I get what you're saying. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Next up on the list, Carpenters with Horizon. It is their sixth release,
Wow, the Bee Gees and the Carpenters. Look at us.
two for one shot. Released on June 6, 1975 through A&M Records, reaching number 10 in the US, number 4 in Canada, and number 1 in the UK. Uh, Recorded from September of 74 until April of 75. Produced by, of course, Richard Carpenter. Um, if I didn't say the playing time, I'm sorry. It has a playing time of 34 minutes and 53 seconds. Uh, I again will hold off on my comments to the end. Ken,
All right.
we're going to shake
Well,
it up a little bit.
there are
Go, Ken, go.
anybody that's ever listened to the Carpenters. There's no surprises here. Um, they knew well what they were famous for and what they did well, and they delivered. Um, this was the last of their albums, I believe, that had that significantly charted. Um, it's to me, it's not their best, but it's got some amazing high points on it.
Yeah,
Um, it's got it's got an interesting it's got some interesting covers on it. One of which was Desperado by the Eagles, which is covered by many artists. This isn't necessarily one of my favorite covers of it, but good for them for grabbing that. I remember their cover of Please Mr. Postman getting a lot of radio play where I was.
Yep.
Um, and so, hey, you know, they're not the first um, artists that write their own material that get bigger hits with covers. Many of the biggest bands have. So, good for them. The other cover, however, Solitaire, the Neil Sedaka song. This is a highlight for me. It really is. This transcends, um, to me, both in quality of song, production, performance, um, of most of the rest of the album. Um, it's just a phenomenal track. I think it's one of their highlights. Only
Yeah.
Yesterday, an original by them, really good. Um, I think got a fair amount of play back in the day. And I don't have a greatest hit, so I'm relying on my memory for um, a lot of these songs.
Get the greatest hits from 73. Fantastic.
Yeah. But another standout is the opener, Aurora.
Yeah.
It sets a tone for this
Hmm.
album that I think is for me is not really met except for Only Yesterday and Solitaire.
Well,
It's very
Eventide.
sparse. It's 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 not commercial at all.
No,
It is in its own way alternative. It's its own thing. Um, and so between Richard Carpenter's writing, um, uh, Karen's singing, and the production, I think it's just absolutely fantastic.
Can I
Um,
throw in just one comment about that?
sure.
continue.
Aurora and Eventide, I think it's the same exact melody, just with
Yeah.
different lyrics at the
Yeah.
beginning. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's like amazing bookends of the album. But you know what struck me when I first heard this song? I thought Tony Banks of Genesis. There's just something about the way Richard is approaching the
Uh,
composing and kind of moving things melodically that reminded me of Genesis.
you mean with
Now,
Aurora and Eventide?
obviously, yeah, Aurora
Okay.
and
Okay.
Eventide.
Okay. No, continue.
I mean,
Continue.
obviously,
You've got that.
Karen takes it to a different place, but there's just something about that quality that just really struck me. And yeah, I wish it's a path that they
We
pursued
continue.
further. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that, with that in
I am
mind.
too after that comment.
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah.
didn't get that, but I get what,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's like Madman Moon that kind
Mm,
of fits in that territory, or Afterglow, or even like One for the Vine. It's just there's just something in there that
Okay.
but
sounds Banks-ish to me.
Banksy.
okay.
Banksy,
Okay.
Tony Banksy.
Okay. If Ken is finished with his
Yeah.
appraisal, you can continue.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump in. But yeah, I'm like you. I thought Solitaire is an amazing standout. Aurora and Eventide, like I was saying, are just absolutely amazing. Um, Desperado and Please Mr. Postman don't really make it for me. And for me, that's because Karen is at her best when she's singing about unrequited love or falling in love. So something like, Desperado, which is this sort of grand pastiche of, the Western hero or villain, it just doesn't really sit well with her vocal quality to me. um I'm caught between Goodbye and I Love You, Love Me for What I Am, and then the standard I Can Dream, Can't I. Those are just unbelievably great tunes, and that so much has to do with her phrasing, her approach to the melody, obviously the arrangement and how Richard is playing stuff.
Can I ask a
I wish
question?
they did a whole album of standards, frankly. Yes, yes, do
Did
so.
you just mouth WTF?
No, I said, oh my God.
Okay, I thought, okay. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, Oh, I almost caught Jim there. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Almost. Wishful
Almost. You
thinking.
almost did. My
Go
WTF moment may come later when we're talking about June 75.
Okay,
But yeah,
go
I
on,
mean,
go on.
um, this whole album, whether it's, the stuff that I talked about, or even the Desperado or Only Yesterday, um, the surprising harmonic choices that comes in how Richard arranged things and how he and Karen sang together is just a continuing source of surprise and delight on this album. I think people kind of slag on the Carpenters because it's just sort of cheesy, but what they did harmonically and melodically, from within the tunes is just absolutely outstanding stuff. Karen plays drums on, I guess, about a third of the album. Jim Gordon, wrecking crew dude extraordinaire, uh, is on the rest of the album, and he's kind of aping Karen's style, and it gets a little too busy for me at times, especially, the fills when you're moving from either the verses to the chorus. Just there's like a lot of that just kind of happens like clockwork, and it just sort of bugged me after a while. So that's what I mean, is that it just gets a little too busy, which sounds odd coming from me since I'm such a drum freak, but it's got to have its place, people. The busyness has to have its place. Um, I mean, Horizon overall, was that the world's smallest violin, or I'm picking at nits? Okay,
Both,
thank you.
Mr.
Um,
Bruford.
Mr. Don't be slagging on my bill. Horizon by the Carpenters, I think, is a really good, solid album. It's probably a little bit better than Main Course to me, um, just because there's not as many meh songs on it.
Mhm.
Um, But yeah, this is a really good, solid listen. And if people want like a good introduction to the Carpenters, writ large, outside of, Yesterday Once More and Close to You and things like that, I think Horizon's a dang good place to start. Fantastic sounding album. Um, yeah, done.
Okay, okay. My take on the album, it's a solid album. I like the fact that Aurora and Eventide, sorry, bookended. I think it's a good intro and an outro. And I do hear what you're saying, Jim, about they're exploring different territory with those two small, like pieces on the album. Like they're like a minute and change each. Um, Only Yesterday is good. I like their version of Desperado. Um, A&M were going to release it as a single, but because Linda Ronstadt had released her version of it for Asylum, they decided against it. Of course, I'm not even going to go into Linda Ronstadt. Um, I
Nudge,
can,
nudge, wake, wake.
well, I'm not even going to go there. We'll talk off camera. Um, but I can dream, can't I? I hear jazz elements, and then when I was reading up on it, like it's a standard, cover from like 1937. Uh, the one Cheese Whiz moment on this album for me, and I do mean dripping with Cheese Whiz. Um, yes, dripping. You heard of dripping with Mellotron? This is dripping with Cheese Whiz. Please, Mr. Postman, why in the hell would you do this? It is so saccharine. I needed an insulin shot after this. Listen, um, no, no, I just could not get over that. Solitaire is a good track, even though Karen Carpenter didn't want to record it. She didn't like the song. Um,
Wow.
Happy is all right. Um, Caught Between Goodbye and I Love You is a good track too. But you know, um, Let Me For What I Am is a really good track. I liked it better than I thought I did. And then again, you end it with Eventide. It's a good, solid album musically. The one thing that would have put it over the top for me, replace me, please, Mr. Postman, with Calling All Occupants.
Well, that was a few years later, wasn't it?
I know, But if you had,
Yeah.
let's just let's just
I
cut
thought
and
that
paste
I've
it.
always thought that
Let,
was a strange cover. Yeah.
let's cut and
Yeah,
paste. Let's cut and paste. Okay, the cover of "Calling All Occupants" from Klaatu. If you would have, if that was around at that point, take that track, put it on this album, banger of an album, banger of an album, because you would have had an album of different elements, of different styles, but it would have blended together, in my very humble opinion, quite beautifully. But I'm not one to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me. You know, that,
but it was you who brought it up. So who
Yeah.
did I hear it from?
there we go.
Armando.
There we go. There we go. I didn't bring up the Linda Ronstadt issue, but I didn't want to go there. Um, wow.
That was all me.
It's been well documented in videos on YouTube that Linda Ronstadt would co-op certain song ideas from people or certain songs. Um, certain artists, Jackson Brown, never mind. But I won't go there. But yeah, I mean, overall, it is a decent album. It is a
Mhm.
decent album to listen to. Uh, Minus the Cheese Whiz moment.
Yeah, Please Mr. Postman is pretty obnoxious. And yeah, I remember hearing it on the radio
Well,
and just going, ugh.
I think one of the reasons that Please Mr. Postman and even several of their other covers over their career don't really work well because Karen wasn't one for bombast for her vocals.
Yeah,
Well,
And when
yeah,
I think of Desperado, I think of that last verse, that really just really peaks when he goes up to those high notes.
yeah,
And Please Mr. Postman, um, I the first one that comes to my mind is the Beatles.
yeah,
And that's and it's bombast. It's big,
yeah.
but Carpenters aren't bombast. And to me, and like I said, I had many of their albums back in the day.
Mhm.
That's where I cut my teeth on harmonies. Um, and because throughout my career as a musician, I've always been involved big on a lot of harmonies,
Yeah.
and that's part of
Um,
what that
yeah,
the
it's
Carpenters, Seals and Crofts, Three Dog Night, it really started tuning my ear for that.
Ooh. Yeah,
And but to me, these days, Carpenters have been regulated to um, the waiting area of the dentist's office,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
coming from those ceiling
And you
speakers,
and you
and it's just calm, nice,
and
you
that's
know,
what they were comfortable with. I mean,
for sure.
for
Well, there's a market
example,
for it.
I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. I watched a documentary on the Carpenters years ago, like in the 90s, and one of their session players who toured with them live, who toured with them, sorry, they were doing they were performing Goodbye to Love. And you know how they do that guitar solo with the fuzz
Mhm.
guitar on the recording?
yep, yep.
Well, the guitarist did his solo and he embellished here and there during the solo live. And they both, Richard and Karen, shot him a look while he was embellishing,
Really?
as to say, don't ever do that again. Because and they would go on record as saying, when we do these songs live, we're going to do them exactly as they are on the album. We're not going to do any solos. We're not going to do any flourishes here and there. You just cut straight to what is on the album. Stick to the game plan. And when he did his guitar solo, he thought he was doing great. Like a little flash here and there. The look that he got from them, he was like, okay, I just been docked some pay. And like, yeah, they were straight laced as like in terms of the music, like you would not believe. But anyways, but I gotta say,
That's okay.
her ability for harmony and her vocal delivery, amazing, amazing. You know,
Yeah, I just want to reiterate one point. Their version of I can dream, can't I? It just makes me wish that they had done an entire album of standards, much like Linda Ronstadt would go to do with What's New in 1983.
yeah,
I think Karen's voice tackling an album of that kind of material would have just been uh, the album just would have been majestic.
Yeah.
I think it would have kickstarted the Great American Songbook into greater heights if Karen had been given the chance to sort of, I wanted to say cut loose on that, but that to what we were saying before, she never really cut loose.
No,
I mean,
no.
her strength was in just even in the subtleties of what she was expressing, but just doing it in this just outstandingly buttery, luscious manner of
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
close to
Well, I
you
mean,
and yesterday once more, superstar. I mean, uh,
they projected this wholesome image in terms of their performances and their personas. So, I mean, yeah, for her to cut loose, no. I mean, her cutting loose was please, Mr. Postman kind of thing. But yeah,
Well, I've always wondered, is it was it a intentional decision not to cut loose, or was that just was she just not good at cutting loose, unlike Linda Ronstadt?
I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah, I've always wondered that, but
I mean, I do remember reading or hearing, again, watching another documentary that when she wanted to do her solo album that Phil Ramone was going to produce, her brother's only condition was, her only advice was don't do disco. Do whatever you want, do a rock album, but don't do disco. Because he thought disco was cheesy. Right. So, I mean,
well,
well,
and
hey,
also at
you
the
gotta know.
time it was hard to come to go disco. You're challenging Ethel Merman.
I know.
That's
And
really tough to
Margaret
do.
and
Yeah.
Margaret
Oh, yeah.
and
That's
Elton
that's
John.
that's tough.
Yeah, I get it.
And my only other disappointment was with the song on this album, "Happy."
Yeah.
I kind of
What
wish
was
they would
anything
take the
but?
the
That's
Rolling
what I mean.
Stones,
You
Rolling
were hoping
Stones
it was the
"Happy."
Rolling Stones
I
cover?
wanted to hear her do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Okay,
That
okay.
that that could have been awesome. I kind of
I
like the guitar
know.
work on Happy.
Okay, we got
It's
okay. We're gonna move on, ladies and gentlemen.
I think they'll be glad we are.
I think
Yes,
so. I would like to do the segue between this album and the next one, if I may.
go for it.
Speaking of albums with fantastic harmonies,
Yes, we have Eagles with One of These Nights. This is the band's fourth release, released June 10th of 1975 through Asylum, eventually Elektra Records. Recorded from 74 between 74 and 75 with a playing time of 43 minutes and 15 seconds. And the album was produced by a longtime producer for the band, Bill. How do you say his last name? Zimchik?
I think
uh,
I've always
sure,
struggled with it.
Zimchik. Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
sure.
this album was, to me, and I'll just, my last comment on this album for now was seen as a bit of a transitional album for the band. But I will hold off on the rest of that after my two co-hosts and cohorts give their opinion of this album. Jim, since you did a wonderful
Well,
segue.
well, well. Yes, since I was Mr. Segway about it. Most Eagles albums these days suffer talking about them kind of has the overwhelming baggage of Don Henley's assery. Let's just
Yeah,
call it like that. It's become very difficult these days to disassociate how Don Henley was back in these days, and it kind of colors the output of the band to a degree. However, when I hear one of these nights, Lionize, and take it to the limit, it's almost like Don's assery can be forgiven because those songs are just so, so, so good. I mean, there's just no arguing this, um, just near perfection that comes from those three tracks. Just the harmonies, the composition, the performances. It's just outstanding stuff. I mean, they anchor the greatest hits album, with the skull on it for good reason. Um, One of the other things that was a delightful surprise. Well, this album had two surprises, one delightful and one which was, WTF. The first is the delightful surprise of Too Many Hands. Man, I think I have heard that song maybe once before, but hearing it within this context was just like, this is great. Why is this not another, you know, canonized Eagles song it's just so well done. Um, and so that was kind of like, my new favorite gem that I've discovered and sort of hoarded from this record because it's, to me, it's just about at the level of those other three great songs. And then you get to Journey of the Sorcerer, which is like, maybe it was just throwing a bone to Bernie Leadon, right?
Wait, you don't like that?
I don't like it.
That's his what the fuck moment.
Okay.
I don't like it because um, it seems out of place with the rest of the record. It seems like they're playing at bluegrass, but they're not hitting it. But yet and maybe that has to do with they're trying to do bluegrass through the lens of like Return to Forever or something. And it's just this weird combination that to me does not work well, for the album.
Okay.
You, I guess that means you don't like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy either, huh?
You know what? I've tried to get into that series and have never been able to do that.
Here we go.
Um, but sticking with One of These Nights. Hollywood Waltz and the final three tracks on side two, they're okay, fine, meh. But it's those four songs that really sort of carry this album,
Yeah.
to me and just make it as if this album, were to be tagged as excellent, it's on the backs of those four songs. And I just don't think I can take this album and sort of put it in the excellent category. I'm going to say, it's like a B to B minus.
Okay.
But if those other songs weren't beyond there, we'd be sort of in the C category. But that's my take on One of These nights. Can you look
Okay.
disappointed in me?
That's because he is greatly. I can just see the
And
look on his face.
Ken thinks he has me figured out, and then I just do one of these.
Ken,
It's like when your favorite child disappoints you, you know. Okay.
Aw.
This I,
Dad.
I started my first
and
Eagles
that's in the
album
word.
was On the Border, which preceded this one. And thoroughly enjoy that album. And when this one came out, I instantly bought it, having not heard a single thing off of it. And I I think it's a great album. I think the Eagles at this point were at the height of their game. I think this was before the Henley Fry uh, Nazi
Domination
period.
effect.
Yeah, um, because you got Felder, later Meisner actually getting a chance to contribute significantly,
Hmm.
to an album. It's got the obvious hits. The One of These Nights, Lion Eyes, Take It to the Limit. Great songs, great songs. But I think Meisner and Leadon are underappreciated. Meisner's writing and vocals, especially Too Many Hands, is just phenomenal. And of course, Take It to the Limit has gotten its recognition. Um, and rightfully so. I think Meisner um, was, treated well. It's on record how Fry and Henley treated many members of the band. I won't go there.
And if you
Leedon's,
don't know, watch the documentary.
yeah, and they're not ashamed of it either. So,
No, they
but
admitted it.
Leedon as a multi instrumentalist is just absolutely wonderful here.
Yeah.
Um, and I especially like his writing and his lead vocals on the last song, "I Wish You Peace."
Hmm.
That song is always kind of haunted me a little bit as just it's such a soulful um, from the heart song in general, but I think he performs it wonderfully.
Yeah.
And it's to me it's a fantastic closer for an album here. Journey of the Sorcerer, I like it because at the time uh when other than listening to country or bluegrass, just listening to rock and roll, did you ever hear a banjo? Not very often, you know.
No. And in this
And
case,
it
what sounds
and
like
it
dueling banjos.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. And that brings forth other images that we won't go farther with. But
No.
it's all I find it very broad and cinematic in its arrangement and production. Um, to me, it fits. Um, I don't know how to really describe it. It's they still have some of their country rock roots on this album,
Yeah.
although this is a transitional album.
Hmm.
I think probably the one that disappoints me is Hollywood Waltz. Eagles in many of their albums will do a waltz song, that 3/4 time,
One,
that
two, three,
waltz
one,
feeling and
two. Yeah.
everything. This one is just for me a little bit too on the nose. I just don't. I think it's well performed, well executed, but it's just okay. Here we go.
Can I ask
Uh,
you a question?
yes,
Is Ticket to the Limit not done in 3/4 time?
yes, it is, but it
Okay.
doesn't.
but it doesn't feel like it.
It
It
doesn't
doesn't
feel
feel
like
like
it
it
though
because
to
of the
me. Yeah.
drums. Okay.
um,
Well,
Sorry.
but
plus the way the strings kind of go over,
Yeah,
into
the
like,
lush
two
string. Yeah.
different,
Okay. Yeah. My
measures.
apologies
It
again. I'm
doesn't
sorry.
just
no, 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 no. No. I'm glad you mentioned that because you're absolutely right. So here's an example where you got an album with two, three, four songs, and they're completely different.
Yeah.
In my ear,
Yeah.
maybe, and so um, labeling and actually naming Hollywood Waltz that way is just a little bit too much on the nose for me. I don't know,
Yeah.
but but man, Too Many Hands. Uh, I remember hearing that. So starting off with One of These Nights as for the first time, and then going into Too Many Hands, it was almost like, wow, this is the standard this album is setting. That's going to be hard to match throughout.
Yeah.
And I'm not convinced that they did with every song, but
right.
man, if for an album to opening twofer, that's killer. You know.
Okay.
So yeah, Too Many Hands I think doesn't get as much recognition. And I Wish You Peace. After the Thrill is a great track too. So, anyway. I think it's a great album. I think it's absolutely one of their best.
Yeah.
And I think it still holds up. It's fine to me. Sometimes I like to try to push Hotel California in long run, out of my ear because I think they're overrated.
Yeah. They kind of get mentioned more and more, like more than any of the other albums.
Sure.
My take on this album is that, I mean, first and foremost, the objective of any record company when a new album comes out is to release singles that best represent what the album is about. And for
Hmm.
me, they've done that with this album. You've got One of These Nights, which has got bit, that bass line that comes in on the intro, and then the guitars, and then the drums come in. It's an ass shaker of a track, mid-tempo, but still an ass shaker of a track. There you go. I know you missed that, Jim. Fantastic. Yes, don't be so
Thank
mean.
you. Thank you for
Yeah.
thinking of me.
Um, you know, the hits do carry this album. Lying Eyes is 6 minutes and 22 seconds of like, you know what? You know what, bitch, I caught you. I mean, I know that you're cheating on me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know you've got your reasons, you know, giving your love to a man, with hands as cold as ice. I understand all that stuff. But basically it's a cheating song, okay? And and Take It to the Limit. Those three songs do best represent what the album is about. And the the drama and all that going, what was going on behind the scenes, notwithstanding, I think it's a solid album. I think it is an album of transition because you had um, Don Tellder making his first appearance fully on this album. He made an appearance on the border, as they say in the notes, somewhere between in the recording. They don't know exactly when, but he just turned up and he started playing with the band. This is Bernie Leadon's final appearance as a member of the Eagles. The rest of the songs, Hollywood Waltz is okay. Too Many Hands is a good song. Uh, I like Journey of the Sorcerer. I like bands that take risks in terms of putting instrumentals on their albums. And yes, it's 6 minutes and 40 seconds, different sections to it, different ideas coming in, different motifs, I guess you call it. But it is a good addition to the album. And again, I like bands that take risks. Even like even if you were to break this up, Journey of the Sorcerer, into three sections, at the start of the album leading into One of These Nights, maybe at the start of side two leading
Mhm.
into Iron Eyes, and
And at the end.
at the end after, or even just before I Wish You Peace.
Mhm.
Who says you can't have two Bernardine songs on an album of the Eagles back to back? Who says? Who says? I Wish You Peace is a fantastic album closer. Um, Even though the band do call this their Cheese Whiz moment, they don't like it. They can't stand it. This track was dedicated to Patty Davis, who daughter of Ronald and Nancy Reagan, who actually disowned her because she was going to move in with Bernie Leadon, and they broke up over that. But I'm not one to gossip, so you didn't hear that from me. Check online. Anyways, I I do feel that this is a good album. I think it's a transitional album. Um, Someone who will remain nameless has said in other shows that the Eagles are a band that basically, if you own a greatest hits or a double greatest hits of theirs, it's pretty much what you need to own. I disagree. I think that this is a strong album. I think it needs to be listened to a lot more. I think this gets overshadowed unfairly by Hotel California. And because I have all the albums on vinyl, big surprise, ladies and gentlemen. I went shopping one day, okay, and I came back with
One day.
the entire. No, one day I came back with the entire album catalog
Uh,
on vinyl. Thank you, Monster Records in Toronto. But I think that this is a really good album. It just needs to be listened to more. It needs to be given more attention. You know, um, what else? After the Thrill Is Gone, it said that it's based on kind of like an answer to BB King's Thrill Is Gone, but I'm not sure if that's the case or not. But the tracks I mentioned, One of These Nights, Lion Eyes, Take It to the Limit, and I Wish You Peace, and Journey of the Sorcerer. That's the glue of the album for me. That's what keeps it together as a cohesive piece of work. So yeah, I think it's a good album. So
Interesting to talk about it as a transition album when you're talking about like people coming in and people coming out, because on that basis, you could sort of make the argument that Hotel California is a transitionary album because you have Joe Walsh coming in.
yeah.
And then you could also argue that The Long Run is a transitionary album because A, it took 3 years to get there, and you have Timothy B. Schmidt coming in and what's his name going out? I can't remember his name. Not
Uh,
Bernie Leadon is the other one.
Randy Meisner.
Randy Meisner. That's yes. Thank you.
Moral of the story is, ladies and gentlemen, the Eagles were a band of transition. That's basically what it was, really.
There you go.
Okay. Um, Ending off our part one of 50th album anniversaries, we have Jefferson Starship with Red Octopus, their second release under the incarnation of Jefferson Starship, released June 13th, 1975 for RCA slash Grunt Records, reaching number one in the US, number 13 in Canada, recorded February of 75, produced by Jefferson Starship and Larry Cox, with a playing time of 42 minutes even. All right. So, who shall I pick on first? Jim.
Okay. Red Octopus. All right. So let's get this out of the way. Miracles, second song on the album. It's perfect. It's just a perfectly done song, and this album is kind of worth it just on the heels of Miracles alone. However, there are a couple of other great tracks on here, in my opinion, that make Red Octopus worth a listen. Fast Buck Freddy, which kicks off the album, is just this great up tempo thing, which benefits from a great Grace Slick vocal and Papa John Creech getting in there with the fiddle, just really, tearing things up. Makes for a really good listen. Similarly, Play on Love on side two, another great, you know, Grace Slick piece with the Papa John in there. Um, However, the rest of the album to me is just pretty meh. I mean, there's these they just don't match up to those other three strong points to me. Um, There is Love, which is also titled Al uh, Garimacel.
I won't even try to pronounce it. Self, but
Maybe
that's
that's some Indian thing. I'm not sure. But and Grace Slick sounds great on that track. She really does. But otherwise, as far as like a composition and an arrangement and whatnot, it's just kind of like meh. It just sort of lays there. Um, yeah, I wanted to like this album collectively more than I did. And again, the Miracles, that was just in my DNA as a 10-year-old in 1975. Fast Buck Freddy and Play on Love, became FM staples in the Bay Area where I grew up. So again, this was all just part of the musical DNA of growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but the rest of the album just doesn't hold up to it. Um, Maybe this era of Jefferson Starship is one that kind of works best on a greatest hits. But having said that, there's almost like so many different versions of Jefferson Starship that it becomes very hard to
yeah.
sort of pick one. I mean, I think Sony Columbia did like the essential Jefferson airplane slash Jefferson Starship slash Starship. And maybe that's the best way to go because you then get the full gamut of what the band did, from, the high points of Miracles to like some of the stuff off, you know, Jane, which is a later track from like 79 or 80, Find Your Way
79.
Back. Yeah. And you've got that period, and then you get to the, We Built This City stuff that makes me want to just, perform
Barf.
violent acts.
Barf.
Uh,
Okay, go on. No.
barf will work as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Red Octopus, B minus kind of album. Of the four that we've discussed today, this is the one that at least makes me want to get up and turn up my stereo.
Exactly. May I go next, Ken?
Sure.
May. That's my. I mean, I remember Miracles being played on AM radio as a 5-year-old. Um, well, I would have been 4. I wouldn't have even been 5 at this point. I remember hearing on AM radio. Um, and
But wait, Ken, what's that reaction about?
When
About
he
how
says he
how
was 4 or 5 and now was 16, it feels weird.
okay, very all right then.
this was released on June 13th. My birthday wasn't until September 19th, so I was
Yeah,
still
yeah,
4.
yeah, no,
All
no.
right, okay.
So,
Four, you're five,
I mean, in terms of the album, Miracles is the only standout track as, as a good song. Good Fiddler. Okay. Yeah, I can, that's all right. But the rest is like, I mean, they're still dealing in the peace and love movement kind of a thing. And the political, we all have to band together and fight the government in order to get through our tough times. And it's like, I don't see you giving up your checks from the record company when the album's sold. Did you? Did you? Really? Like Rick, come on.
yeah, Bernie Sanders.
When Grunt and RCA sent you those royalty checks, did you give half of it away to charity? I mean, like kind of like come on. I mean, like it just kind of reeks of that sort of the end of the 60s love peace movement kind of thing. It's like Alice Cooper said it best. We were tired of the love and peace generation. We were more like get in your face and let's have some fun. We're here to rock out kind of thing, with the Alice Cooper band. But it's just, yeah, it's not a memorable album aside from Miracles. I mean, in terms of a single. So, I mean, you also had Play on Love as a single, but the rest of it, meh, So, Ken.
Sometimes there's nothing sadder than an old hippie. You know,
Okay.
their cause didn't work, but they're still trying to. They still won't give up. So, but anyway, my relationship with Jefferson in both of their incarnations is very, very mixed. Um, uh, for me, this album, I have in my notes, this is the airplane coming down to Earth, basically.
Coming down or crashing
Artistically,
down? Okay.
yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
Um, they're they were mixing their jam style with what they considered was commercial, which is almost like the whole concept is almost an oxymoron. It's just like, wait a minute, those are two. It's oil and water. It just doesn't mix. For me, the best Jefferson airplane slash starship is the Marty Ballin. Um, he was the originator of the band. Um, it's well recorded how he got screwed over several times, and ousted as the leader of the band unjustly. Um, Miracles is one of his greatest songs, and whereas here again, as in many other, I recommend the album cut that runs over 6 minutes as opposed to the single cut, which is 3 minutes something. I have to admit, um, the single mix could have been worse. I think it maintained the overall feel and vibe of the song.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
but the album, it's it represents its epicness, for a song. Even though there's not a whole lot of variation, it's still, just let it run. It's a great song. But anyway,
It
we've
flows.
on this album, the Marty Balin songs are for me are the best.
Okay.
The ones that he does the singing on. Um, I guess I have to admit my feelings about Grace Slick's vocals is jaded by so many of the stories that I've read about her
Mm.
since then.
Yeah.
Like other artists we've talked about on this channel. So I cannot be completely. She does sound great as far as the condition of her voice and her singing. Yeah. Their typical Jefferson Airplane Starship harmonies and backgrounds on this is the same as it's always been. It hasn't changed at this point, but it's still that jam band kind of style,
Yeah.
which just really feels weird with something that's trying to be commercial.
Yeah.
Um, it's fine on Miracles. On some of the others here, it's not.
Mhm.
Um, uh, I think Miracles, for me, vastly overshadows everything else on the album.
Mhm.
Sure.
The band is playing very well. The
Yeah.
singing is very good. And as my last comment in my notes, but the material is meh.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
we are united in our madness.
There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. 50th anniversaries for the month of June 1975, end of part one.
Part one. Yep.
We will be back with part two of 50th anniversaries,
Good.
50th album anniversary, sorry, for June of 1975. So please put down the comments below, down there, uh, your comments and opinions and memories of these albums. Maybe there's something that we missed in our madness in terms of the way we describe these albums. Because, I mean, we are not music experts in any shape, form, or fashion,
Nope.
but we're
No.
just giving
No,
you
no,
our
no.
take on what we hear when we hear these albums. So, again, please chime in with your comments. And I want to just take a quick note out. On one of our previous episodes, um, one of our viewers had said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he had said that watching that certain episode that he commented on was like watching good friends talking and over a drink and just having a good time talking about music. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what we try to portray on this channel. Just having a good time uh, talking about music and talking about what we like. Okay. And I'm glad that that has come across on these episodes. Okay. And we will definitely try and keep up the work that we're trying to do here. And without these two gentlemen, and along with Bill Schuster, it would not have been possible to continue this channel. Okay. Enough of my preachiness. And ladies and gentlemen, please look after yourselves and one another. Please click like and subscribe and do hit the notification bell to keep yourselves on top of any new content we've got coming up. And we will see you soon with 50th album anniversaries, part two.